So we're approaching 2025 and the PlayStation 4 is almost 12 years old. So in this video, I'm going to give you 10 reasons why you should consider picking up a PlayStation 4 in 2025. Whoa, let's get on with it. So the first reason you should consider picking up a PlayStation 4 in 2025 is the price. So the PlayStation 4 is a great way to play AAA games on a budget. On the used market, you can commonly find it for under £150. And sometimes even under £100. This is great value for money considering that the PlayStation 5 Pro is £700. You can get 3 of these for the price of 1 of these. And the PS4 can actually play a lot of the same games. And it's not just the PS4 console that's cheap. You need to consider that the games are going to be a lot less expensive than current generation console games. For example, I picked up these games used and I didn't pay more than £5 for each of them. We've got Uncharted 4, Ratchet & Clank, Neo, all great games and they're heavily discounted. So before I move on with my next reason, if you are enjoying, please consider subscribing and dropping us a like. It turns out that only 1% of my viewers are actually subscribers and it really supports the channel. We're on the road to 6,000 subscribers, which is absolutely amazing. Anyway, let's get on with the video. So my second reason for picking up a PlayStation 4 in 2025 are the games. Loads of great games and exclusives were released for the PS4 throughout its life cycle. I've got a handful of them here actually. So I've got Uncharted 4, Ratchet & Clank, Neo, Spider-Man, and some others that are worth mentioning are Bloodborne and God of War. So as you can see, there are loads of great games and exclusives for the PS4 that will run really well and you can pick them up for not very much money. It's also worth mentioning that a lot of new exclusives that are being released for the PlayStation 5 are also being released for the PlayStation 4. An example of this is 2022's God of War Ragnarok, which you can get on both consoles. So my third reason for picking up a PlayStation 4 is the disc drive. Current gen consoles are being released left, right and centre without disc drives. You've got the Xbox Series S, PlayStation 5 Slim Digital Only Edition, and the PlayStation 5 Pro only comes as a digital only console. And I know that a lot of gamers do like physical media, so it is nice to know that every edition of the PlayStation 4 was released with a disc drive. And having the option between digital games and physical games is always better than just being forced to download digital games. And that's because, as I've already mentioned, physical games tend to be a lot cheaper than digital games, and also because you can share physical games with a friend. And when you're bored with a game, you can sell it to get some of your money back, which is something you can't do with digital games. And the disc drive can also double up as a DVD Blu-ray player, which is pretty cool. So anyway, if you buy a PlayStation 4 in 2025, you can be assured that it's going to have a disc drive. So my fourth reason for picking up a PlayStation 4 in 2025 is actually quite an interesting one. It's actually the internal storage, so let me explain. So the PlayStation 4 comes with a 500GB mechanical hard drive, unless you go with the Pro model, which has a terabyte. So on paper, it's not that impressive. It's 500GB, which is about half the storage of current gen consoles. It's also a mechanical hard drive, so the read and write speeds will be much slower. But the reason I think this is a positive for the PlayStation 4 is because of how cheap it is to upgrade. Upgrading the storage on the PlayStation 4 is going to be so much cheaper than, let's say, upgrading the storage on an Xbox Series X, which requires you to go out and buy the expensive expansion cards. Or for example, the PlayStation 5, which requires you to go out and buy NVMe M.2 SSDs, which are a lot more expensive than SATA hard drives. You should be able to buy a couple of terabyte in hard drive space for less than £100. Or if you did want to upgrade the read and write speeds, which would increase loading times within games, you can go out and buy a SATA SSD for not a lot of money. So my fifth reason as to why you should pick up a PlayStation 4 in 2025 is the graphics. So you're probably thinking that graphics is an unusual reason to recommend a last generation console, as the current generation consoles such as PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X do have better graphics. But in a recent video I made where I tested out mouse and keyboard on the PlayStation 4, I was actually extremely impressed with the graphics performance of the PlayStation 4. And yes, you do need to be reasonable with your graphical expectations, as the hardware in the PlayStation 4 is almost 12 years old. But I can guarantee if you're playing on a smaller 1080p TV with a well-optimized game, a lot of people will struggle to tell if they're playing on a PlayStation 4 or a PlayStation 5. If you're hoping to play games at 4K 120 frames per second, then you probably will be disappointed, as this PlayStation 4 Slim does max out at 1080p, 60 frames per second. But if you're a more casual gamer and you don't pixel peep, then the graphics of the PlayStation 4 are still very impressive. And the graphics and performance of the PlayStation 4 has aged a lot better than the Xbox One which in 2025 is going to be struggling to play a lot of modern games. I recently watched a video by a YouTuber called Espresso which compared the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One playing the new Black Ops 6 beta, and basically in summary the PlayStation 4 version ran okay. Obviously the graphics weren't as good as current gen consoles, but it was playable at a almost stable 60 frames per second, whereas the Xbox One version was just choppy and too blurry to actually play competitively. So I think that it is very impressive that we're approaching 2025 and the PlayStation 4 is still able to play AAA games pretty well. So my sixth reason is design, size and form factor. So this reason is slightly down to personal preference, but I am a really big fan of the design and size of the PlayStation 4 console. To keep things fair, we do have the slim variant of both the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, but as you can see the PlayStation 4 Slim is a much smaller, more practical design. This is much easier to set up underneath or beside your TV. Whereas the PlayStation 5, so this is the slim variant, so this is the smallest version of the PlayStation 5, but I've said it in previous videos, I do think the PlayStation 5 design is quite awkward. So yeah, this reason was down to personal preference, but I do much prefer the PlayStation 4 design over the PlayStation 5. So my seventh reason for picking up a PlayStation 4 in 2025 is actually the DualShock 4 controller. So the DualShock 4 controller is still a great controller. It looks modern in my opinion, even though it is over 10 years old. And even though it's been superseded by the DualSense controller from the PlayStation 5, it still shares a lot of features with the newer DualSense controller. For example, both controllers have touchpads on the front, and the button layout is pretty much identical. Both controllers have built-in rechargeable batteries, and in the hand the DualShock 4 controller is still very comfortable, and it's still a decent controller to be used in 2025. The eighth reason why you should pick up a PlayStation 4 in 2025 is actually crossplay. A lot of popular online multiplayer games such as Fortnite, Warzone actually have crossplay. What that means is even if you go out and save some money and buy a PlayStation 4 over a PlayStation 5, and let's say your friends have a PlayStation 5 or even an Xbox Series X, with your PlayStation 4 you'll still be able to play online and enjoy online games such as Fortnite, Warzone with them. What this means is it doesn't matter if you have a PlayStation 4 or the newer PlayStation 5, both consoles on cross-platform games should be able to play together. So my ninth reason as to why you should pick up a PlayStation 4 in 2025 is actually the list of peripheral devices that can be used with the PlayStation 4. What I mean by that is devices that can be connected directly to your PlayStation 4 to enhance your gaming experience. First off, there is the obvious devices such as headsets, the DualShock controller, but there's actually the first generation VR headset, or the PlayStation VR headset, which you can get for not very much money, which works perfectly with the PlayStation 4. So if you've become bored of using a traditional controller, then you can plug in a mouse and keyboard to your PlayStation 4 and play games just like a PC gamer. I've recently done a video showing you how to connect a mouse and keyboard to the PlayStation 4 and testing out various games such as Warzone, Fortnite. You can check that out on my channel. But it works really well, and the PlayStation 4 is definitely a very good console for using mouse and keyboard. So my 10th and final reason as to why you should consider picking up a PlayStation 4 is actually PlayStation Plus game catalog. What this is a monthly or yearly subscription where you sign up to PlayStation Plus and you get access to a whole range of games. And essentially this is a service like Netflix, Spotify or Game Pass on the Xbox side of things, where you pay this subscription fee and you get access to a whole library of games. And I actually think that it is a fairly decent library of games. The library includes games such as Bloodborne, God of War, Spider-Man. There are a whole range of actually pretty decent games. And to get access to this service, I only paid £80 for the year, so it's actually pretty decent value. So if you are picking up a PlayStation 4 or you've got a PlayStation 4 or a PlayStation 5, then I would consider just having a look at this service. I've really enjoyed it. Anyway, that wraps up this video on 10 reasons why you should consider picking up a PlayStation 4 in 2025. If you have enjoyed, consider subscribing, drop us a like. It would be really appreciated. And I will see everyone in my next video.